China may have developed a new generation of missile technology capable of targeting high-value aircraft thousands of miles away. According to sources, the Chinese military has developed hypersonic glide vehicles that can launch air-to-air weapons. The aim is to threaten aircraft that normally operate far from the battlefield, including aerial tankers, airborne warning and control aircraft, and flying command posts, and that could change the calculation for any future conflict between China and US. The development is part of a broader Chinese effort to make its missile arsenal capable of performing multiple military roles. China has already the world's largest ballistic missile arsenal, estimated at more than 3,150 ballistic missiles, along around 300 ground-launched cruise missiles. The new development reportedly goes even further. China has added air-to-air capabilities to some hypersonic cruise missiles and anti-ship capabilities to several missile types. At the heart of the development are hypersonic glide vehicle or HGVs. Unlike a conventional ballistic warhead that follows a predictable trajectory, an HGV can maneuver through atmosphere on its way to the target. That makes it harder to track and intercept. Hypersonic glide vehicle launched from the China's DF-17 could reportedly travel around 1,500 miles. Long-range DF-27 is estimated to have the range of 5,000 miles, potentially putting targets as far away as Hawaii within reach, even Guam. Now, using a ballistic missile has a challenge because people can misconstrue it as a sort of a nuclear attack. So that's another problem. But when you go in for a hypersonic missile attack, it's a different level of attack within the theater. There cannot be any larger miscalculation. But the potentiality is that it can actually destroy your assets which operate beyond the ambit of theater. And what does it change for America and China? Let me just introduce my guests. I'm joined by Air Commodore Dr. Ashwinder Singh Bahal and Anushka Saxena, research analyst at Takshashila Institution, who understands the mind of PLA very well. Let me go across to, thank you, Dr. Bahal first. So what does it change, sir? What does this change?
Thank you, Karkite, for inviting me, and also present greetings to the eminent co-panelists. Now, I want to tell you something. What is a hypersonic glide vehicle? Hypersonic means speed of 5 Mach or more. Glide vehicle means it does not have its own power source. So means there has to be a carrier that launches it, and thereafter it is utilized. Third is, till now we have had hypersonic glide vehicles. For example, Fatah 2, which was used after 28 February attacks on Israel by Iran, and they had used a hypersonic glide vehicle launched from Fatah 2 missile, which was maneuverable. Now, maneuverable means is first the speed itself, then the range, and then maneuverable makes it extremely difficult to be intercepted, and therefore its effectiveness increases significantly, and now it can be used to target with this important additional capability of adding up air-to-air missiles. Now, till now, air-to-air missile being added to either a hypersonic glide vehicle or to any form of missile has not been heard of. So now this is the first important difference that has come up, which can change the theatrics with respect to us, primarily because China has an important excessive amount of superiority in the numbers of high value aircraft, such as you mentioned, airborne early warning and airborne warning and control systems, which are 40 to 60, whereas India just has currently 6, both AVAX and AEW combined, and likely to have 12 and 18 in future. So if any of our aircraft or air-to-air refuelers, which India just has 6 and they have at least 5 times more in number, that's around 30. And similarly, command and control and electronic warfare aircraft. So any of our high-value assets get reduced by this kind of a weapon system, it is a cause of serious concern to us. That is the first point. Second point is that the Chinese have already made operational from Dongfeng 17, you mentioned Dongfeng 17 and Dongfeng 21, they have already operationalized YJ-21 and TD-21. These are the anti-ship missiles with long ranges. So first, they have already operationalized this, whereas our Project Dhwani, which is launched from an Agni booster with Mark 6 Plus, is supposed to have flown in December 2025, but is likely to be flying very soon now, its first trial. So its induction is going to be in 2029-30 with a speed of 6 Mach plus. Project Vishnu, which is also a scramjet tested, has a speed of about Mach 8, but it is still in the test, the development stage. Remember 1200 seconds? We discussed this with you in one of your programs a few months back, where we had carried out and India had achieved this milestone of about 20 minutes of hypersonic speeds. Because after ramjet, this scramjet is the next one which can take speeds above 5 Mach, important for BrahMos. So now Project Vishnu is in development, and we have another development which is long range anti-ship missile, which has a range of about 1500 kilometers, again in development stage, but none of them are operationalized.
Okay.
This is first. Second is none of them have air-to-air missiles. Whereas in this, there is an air to air missile. So you see, when a hypersonic glide, first of all, it's the carrier. If let's say Dongfeng 17 takes it or 21 takes it, in our case, the Agni booster. So if they take it, it has a particular range. So you gave a range of 1500 miles and then 5000 miles. And then attached to is the range of the air to air missile. Like, for example, in the case of China, it is PL. 21 or PLXX, which have a range between 300 to 800 kilometers. So we are looking at additional range of this. And therefore, they have an ability of standoff, which means before we can react against them, they have already shot down our high value assets. And whereas we are nowhere today close to the operational capability, we would be close by 2029-30, but with no air to air missile capability. And that is a significant
Correct.
threat that has emerged from China.
Uh, Anushka, when did China decide to invest in this missile program? What, was it before Xi Jinping, or Xi Jinping kickstarted a different sort of a view of deterrence in terms of outdoing American Navy? Because this missile architecture outdoes American naval might.
Right. Well, thanks so much for that. I think the missile program that the Chinese boast and talk about and always emphasize on improving precedes Xi Jinping by many, many years. In fact, many would want to believe that the defense industrial base is an invention of the West and was restricted to it until good old Xi Jinping came along. That's not true. In fact, Mao Zedong advertently or inadvertently launched the two bombs and one satellite program, which gave impetus to the Chinese missile program, and so in that sense, it's traversed a long trajectory of nearly 70, 80 years. That said, I think yes, in the past 15 years, because of the emphasis on profitability in defense state-owned enterprises as induced by Xi Jinping, as well as the focus on countering American might, which acts as an external determinant for or a push for some of these developments. We've definitely seen advances in China's missile program, whether it be ship-based or ground-based, that have emerged in the last few years. Air Commodore Behel talked about some really interesting things. Read the challenges this can pose to India. I just wanted to make 2 points about how this missile program, this particular capability is being discussed, and what we might be over exaggerating, right? One is, of course, the PLA has a history of deterrence by disclosure, right? So it is possible that they leaked this to the Japan Times and then it carried on to a news outlet in India, just as a point of disclosure, because the maths of how a seeker alone can target a critical aircraft like airborne early warning and control is just not there, right? Even if the PL-15 or the PL-17 has the range outside of the range of the HGV, you're talking about an aircraft that is moving at 15 kilometers per minute. So the range, the circular radial range that we're looking at is 300 kilometers. And not to mention, the HGV or the seeker will lock into the target at launch. It does not know where the aircraft will be going midair, and would need radar homing at the end, all of that jazz, right? And so it's not that accurate as one might assume it to be. The other thing is, perhaps the Americans leaked news of this sort precisely because of what ET talks about, right? Which is the idea that they're going through a phase where they're exhausting Patriots, they're exhausting Thar radars, and they need the Golden Dome project going. They need more budget for interceptors and the likes, right? So it could be the PLA or it could be the US, but the fact is that the maths is a bit over exaggerated at the moment. And even if this capability was true, nobody would want to fire an
Okay, you know,
IRBM
you,
to take
you
out
sparked a
fuel
very,
tanker in
you
the.
sparked a very, actually you sparked a very important idea in my mind. You know, though I would have closed it, but very quickly to Dr. Bahar. You see, there was a great conversation that was taking place on YouTube. You know, people were making fun of the robots. You know that robot Olympic that is taking place in China, and then a lot of people started tweeting about it, saying, "Boss, next 10 years we'll be fighting with the robots." You know, don't make fun of these running robots. So I'm just saying, this tech, which she said very rightly, it may be a red herring, you know, this tech demo that is taking place, but we also need to contextualize it. I mean, so they have done something which is astounding.
Absolutely. You see the way they have developed Kartike in robo technology, where the humanoid robots are now actually fighting wars. You know, they have even deployed it in Tibetan Autonomous Region.
Really?
That is one. Now, number two, I want to highlight one aspect of what she said. You know, this report is from Bloomberg. And it cites, you know, China's aerospace studies unit, which is part of the US. Now, though it is, they are citing an unnamed, but I want to highlight is that they have already operationalized the anti-ship missile through the Dongfeng 17 and the Dongfeng 27, as well as from H-6 bomber. So one is from launched from a destroyer, the YJ-21, and the TD-21 is launched from the H-6 bomber. This is already operationalized, this technology. Now, what we are looking at is that we operationalize a technology in the hypersonic glide vehicle, where the missile, when it is launched, air-to-air missile, in the general area of where these aircraft are operating. Now, these aircraft are generally transport aircraft which have a speed of around 600 to 800, 900 kilometers an hour. And when they're orbiting to provide the support, especially air-to-air refuelers, they're all around
So
600 kilometers
just
an
one addition.
hour. Last thing,
No,
last thing I want to tell
I
you.
want you to take this up. So
Yeah.
Russians and the Chinese, their deterrence has been very missile centric against Americans, which you know, which have invested in huge flotillas. Is there some reason behind it why they have invested?
Absolutely, because now today the American flotilla, they have the largest navy, operational navy with the largest number of submarines. In fact, the Chinese number of assets are now increased in terms of the naval assets, but the potent assets of aircraft carrier and submarines, they are much more effective of the Americans. Now, how do you counter that? That is being countered by asymmetric strategy, which is a launch of ballistic missiles through aircraft. That is air-launched ballistic missile, ALBMs, and also systems like this, which is coming up, where this type of air-to-air missile is going to have an active radar, and towards the terminal stages, and imaging infrared systems. Now, I have worked extensively in this technology when I was in the Air Force, and now you look at even our own systems that are going to come up in future, Astra 3, and also we were talking of Vishnu and long-range anti-ship missile. Now we are moving from ramjet to scramjet, which means speeds above Sigma. We are looking at higher degree of precision. You know, earlier the Chinese faced in hypersonic glide vehicles, the problem was of accuracy. They had in kilometers, but today they have significantly improved this accuracy with the help of either the inertial navigation systems or the GPS integrated with the Bedao system, that is their navigation system, or Chinese navigation system. So whilst we may find it a little, you know, what she mentioned right now, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, but what we have to look at, the Chinese have been able to use the asymmetric strategy, what you were mentioning, and working. Iran has already got a Fatah 2 operational, which has utilized, which has got a hypersonic glide vehicle, and it proved to be uninterceptable by the
Do we
Israelis
have
or
a
the press.
hypersonic weapon, sir, right now, or we have a supersonic weapon?
No, we do have hypersonic weapons, but actually most of our missiles, ballistic missiles, are hypersonic. whether you're talking of Agni 2, 3, or Agni 5, they're all hypersonic missiles. Like the Orishnik is 10 Mark of the Russians, these are also hypersonic missiles. And it's very difficult to intercept an hypersonic missile, primarily for the short reaction time that it gives to the radars. We have green pine radars and other radars which have now been upgraded. I don't want to
Okay.
tell you about that because that is still in the confidential
Okay.
domain. But let me tell you, it may be still in a thinking stage as of this moment of air-to-air missile use, but Chinese will prove it to be operational in the next 5 to 10 years.
Anushka, your closing comments.
Right. Well, again, yes. Although I cannot express hope here that the Chinese prove it true in the next 5 to 10 years. Again, for me, the thing to think about is how each of the ISR aspects of a vehicle like this are interceptable, especially considering that this is at the ideation stage right now. It is true that AAM capabilities on an HGV are not real right now. Not to mention, for a seeker to be embedded in an HGV, you need that infrared capability that Air Commodore Behel was talking about. And at the speed that it is moving, it would be a surprise to me if a camera on the nose is not burnt up in the air even before the seeker is released, right? So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of technical developments that need to happen here for it to be realized. But I think if 5 to 10 years is the timeline that we're looking at, the satellite data that will be used mid cruise, tracking of launch stages, all of those are easily interceptable and can be done with. And I come back to the point that I made at the end of my first response, which is that nobody wants to fire an IRBM to take out a tanker. And especially if India has 6 IL-76s, I think ground-based air defenses or air-to-air missiles like the PL-15s can do the job just from the Chinese perspective. Again, I don't express
Okay.
hope that they will.
Okay.